Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Five Door Media podcast, where we are diving deep into what makes home service companies thrive. This season, we are exploring the mysterious topic of company culture, the people, the principles, the purpose that define the heartbeat of service businesses. Today's guest is Martha Woodward, who is the co founder of QualityDriven Software, the platform designed to help cleaning and service businesses track employee performance, reduce client churn, and create a culture of accountability. She's widely respected for her leadership and shaping positive company culture while also applying measurable data backed systems to improve team results. What sets Martha apart is her bold belief that culture isn't just a buzzword, it's a lever for profitability. And through her work, she's empowered countless business owners to step out of the day to day chaos and into a role of strategic leadership. She's also been a vocal advocate for using technology, including automation and now AI, to build not just better businesses, but better places to work. Martha, we're honored to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Um, I didn't know I did all those things.
You do a lot of things. I always make the joke, like, I wish somebody could follow me around in every room I enter, like, introduce me to the brain like someone introduces you on a podcast. It's just the best feeling in the
Absolutely.
world.
Yeah.
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 Hey, well, thank you for being here.
You bet.
You've had a wild, like, 12 to 18 months, like last months in your life. And I am so happy to say you are coming live from your new home
I
after you had a dramatic loss of your home due to a fire. So, like, thank you so much for being here and taking the time. And also, like, welcome home. How's it feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Feels good, like we were talking before we started. It doesn't feel like home yet, but I know it will. And we're in the same location. Rooms are in a little bit different places, and you know, I gotta admit, most things are a little bit nicer, or at least to the level.
Sure.
We had just remodeled a few years before, so anyway, we're home. It's good.
Well, I have to bring up, we were talking before, the sign behind you. It is not like this, like, retro vintage
Yeah.
design sign. That is one of the few things that survived the fire. So, like, the symbolic, like, gesture of your company logo on this cool metal sign
Mhm.
survived the fire, and then, like, here you are today back at it. So
Yeah,
I love that. It's a very cool thing to me.
thank you. Yeah,
Awesome.
it's here, burnt, rested, and all.
But it looks cool all at the same time, right?
Yeah, it made it.
Well, let's get into the conversation about this mysterious thing called company culture, which you are such an expert on. And you have led so many rooms, so many conversations across the country on helping home service businesses, cleaning companies really try to figure this out. And, you are now a tech business owner, but you also were a service business owner before you got into that tech world. So, like, your perspective of this is multifaceted, right? Like,
Mhm.
you have not just, own a tech company that has a ridiculous amount of data that can lead you to seeing technical changes in company cultures across the country, but also you built a company culture as well when you had your cleaning company. So I want to start at the root of it. How do you define company culture for a home service business? Like, how do you define something like that?
So you can have toxic company cultures and really positive, healthy company cultures. So I would just describe it as the environment and the vibe in which you feel when you enter that workplace. So, because it's not all roses, and it wasn't all roses for me either. So, your culture is that feel and the um, values and uh, the vibe that you give off in your interactions, and also just in the appearance almost.
The use of that word "feel" has been, like, a very common word,
Mhm.
throughout this season when we're talking about company culture. Because yeah, a lot of times it's not something you see or you can smell, but you feel it. You feel it in the air. You feel it from how the, like you said, vibes of like people inside that company,
Yep.
what they're feeling like, and how honestly how people in the company make other people feel. That is such a great signal for like the health of a company culture,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, like I said at the beginning, your perspective is really interesting, due to you owned a home service like cleaning company, and now you own a tech company that is surrounded by the idea of getting good feedback from customers, as well as like seeing surveys from, employees even. But I want to talk about when you did own that cleaning company.
Mhm.
How intentional were you about company culture? Or did your love and passion for company culture come afterwards? Or what was that like when you owned the business compared to like what you now know and see in the seat that you're in now?
Well, I would tell you that I had probably 3 seasons of my business. I had the I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I had the, "Oh my gosh, I gotta fix this" season. And then I had the, "Ah, you know, things are much more peaceful, less chaotic." Not that I
Mm,
had everything dialed in, but it was night and day to my beginning to my last, 5, 6 years. And I think, the early days caused me to either leave it or fix it. And
mm,
it did kind of birth quality driven because I had to come up with a system that I could use to fix it. I was spoiled in my previous life when I was a director of a department at a hospital that, you know, I didn't give it enough credence, but pretty much everyone that I supervised was motivated, um, I don't want to say well educated because yes, they came with degrees because of the type of department we were,
mm,
but they came in and I had to do very, very little prodding to get the goals accomplished. Whereas, I thought that I would be able to do that with the cleaning business, and number 1, I hired all the wrong people to begin with. So, there was that for sure, like, people I would never hire now, and, I always say I feel bad when I see my customers from those first early days. I'm kinda like, "I'm so sorry. I just
oh,
could
jeez.
have better."
Please forgive me.
I know. But then, then it evolved to, okay, I'm doing a little better at hiring the right people. But even with that, you have to figure out kind of what's too much hand holding or nagging or micromanaging and what's not enough. And so that's where I kind of built these systems to make it take all the motion out of it, set
Mm.
up metrics.
I like your we had 3 phases, right?
Mhm.
And I think through those 3 phases, was there a certain moment you remember, maybe it was with a staff member, maybe it was with yourself, or maybe it was like a customer or a client, like that moment defined what you wanted that company culture to be moving forward from here on out? Like, do
Yeah.
you remember what learning moment maybe happened where you're like, "Whatever I just felt,
Mhm.
that's what I want it to be, and it's going to be for the rest of it."
So I had a couple things leading up to the one moment, and the couple of things were I remember distinctly when I was filling in for the office manager when she was on vacation, and I remember, like, quickly learning I did not wanna answer the phone. If it was a current client and I saw that on caller ID, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't wanna answer his phone," because I we were getting complaints. Our quality
You're afraid of what was on the other side of that.
it was
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna be pretty, especially, like I say, if I knew it was a current client, I was just like, "Oh, no, here we go." And, the other thing I remember is because of that, and because I couldn't figure out how to solve our quality and attendance problems, um, I remember a point where I was kind of embarrassed to go in a local store wearing our
Oh
uniform,
man.
you know? Yeah, and I remember, and the thing is, I think most of us magnify the issue, and it wasn't as bad as it felt internally to me, but I felt that. And so I had that, and then the one thing that really did it for me, and it's like that last final straw. um, I had an employee that was absolutely calling the shots, and she thought she was big stuff, and you know, she would grace us with her appearance that day kind of person. And I was letting a lot of this happen. I remember it being Thanksgiving week, and I think my dad was pretty sick or there was something, and this girl called me and she was letting me know what days she was gonna be available to work. And
Mm,
I'm sitting there, and she wasn't part-time or PRN. She was full-time, and she's letting me know, like, next week when she's gonna be able to work. And I it just my mouth dropped open, and I thought, "Who the hell is in charge here?" And
yeah.
I had to laugh at myself and be like, "Apparently not you." And it's not about being in charge, but it's about chaos, and that's what I had.
Who's leading the ship?
Yeah, and so that really was a defining moment for me because I was like, "Wait, this cannot continue." And, I think it was such a blatant, in your face, "I'm gonna make my own schedule," kind of deal, and
Mm,
I'm just like, "Alright, alright." And I really did draw a line in the sand that day, and I came back and, I rewrote our policies, and I thought, I gotta come up with policies that I actually follow instead of people basically defining our lack of attendance policy and all of the things. And, so, if I saw her today, I'd thank her because she really, now she was probably one of the first people that exited after I showed them that I meant business now. But yeah, she did me a favor.
love that. Yeah. We've had situations like that too, where I think the expression is like you're letting the tail wag the entire dog,
Mm,
right? Like, and you can't let something like that happen.
yeah.
So then that moment happened, slapped you in the face, as you said, like it hit you right in the face. Like, what changed? Because I mean, I think I'm predicting it. You had a pretty relaxed atmosphere.
Mm,
You had a pretty relaxed culture where like that tail was being allowed to wag the whole dog.
right.
When you pivot from that type of culture, I could see it not being the easiest transition, right? Because that one employee probably wasn't the only one that was used to that type of relaxed environment.
Right.
Tell me about how that transition went and how did you overcome that?
So, um, thankfully, I had the foresight to know that this was gonna
Rough.
be
Yeah.
ugly. And,
Yeah.
um, I thought about my policies, and I had always had policies and procedures because I came from the corporate world and knew I needed them. The problem is my employees probably didn't know them, and I didn't follow them because I was so desperate to not be short-staffed. And that's
Mm,
really where it all stems from with myself and a lot of people is we get so desperate to not be short-staffed that we sacrifice kinda everything, you know? And, I was sacrificing my reputation, our just what people said about us and to not be short staffed. So what I did is I revamped the policies to something that I could follow no matter what. So I kind of loosened up some of the policies because I needed to be able to follow them. And, policies aren't any good if, I mean, sure, they might be strict and restrictive, but they're not any good if you don't follow what they say. So I
Mhm.
fixed that. I rolled that out to the staff and said, and I kind of came from a place of, okay, you guys, I have really been growing up as a leader. I have these policies and I haven't held you to them. And I know that, sometimes you're filling in for people who call, I just kind of tried to make it my fault, which it was. Um, but also knew that I was talking to some of the offenders that were going to then be in trouble. And,
Mhm.
had them re-sign all those policies. And then nobody really believed me until you had those first couple of sacrificial lambs that, it was so I could show people I mean what I say and we're going to do it. And then to answer that, question about like how do you do it? You have that piece, and then I proactively went and looked at our client list and said, "Okay, we're going to be ready." I basically made a hierarchy list of who we would cut first and, like, if we're short-staffed, how are we gonna fix it? So, we had some accounts that weren't very profitable, a couple that probably cost me money, and,
Mhm.
so those were first on the chopping list, and then there's monthly accounts, there's people who skip all the time, I just made that hierarchy of, "Alright, if I have to trim clients, here's what I'm doing." And, it all worked out. And, it didn't happen immediately. I would say it took a good 6 months to feel a difference.
Mhm.
And then after after a year or 2, we were pretty much in a groove. And, it was, I learned the hard way. I would much rather be short-staffed than feel a victim
Mm.
at I was basically feeling like a victim in my own company. Now it was my own doing, but
Sure.
it felt like, I was getting beat up on, which I was, but, I was allowing it, and it was what it was, but it taught me some valuable lessons.
Martha, this is so good because I there has to be people watching and listening to this that relate to that story so much. And like they might be right where you were,
Mhm.
right? They might be in people calling them as full-time employees, "Hey, here's when I'm going to work."
Right.
Like they might be they might have heard that phone call this morning. And what I know about you, because I've known you for a while now, um, you you're a people pleaser
Yeah.
and like in the best way, but also can be to a fault, right? And a lot of times that's true with people that are people pleasers. Like you will give anybody the shirt off your back, you will lay down your coat so they don't have to walk in mud, but that also can creep into like to a fault,
Right.
right? And I think a lot of times in the cleaning industry, whether you own a residential, commercial cleaning business or window cleaning or whatever it is, a lot of those people started that company because like they also are people pleasers because they wanted to help people,
Right.
right? Like the cleaning businesses go into people's most vulnerable spaces, their homes, and they go in there with like an open heart to like help them through things. So like I think the message you're preaching right now is probably hitting so many years, and it's very refreshing to hear it. I just wanted you to know that because there's probably a lot of people that are in this world too that also are people pleasers,
Mhm.
and they are stuck into making sure the people around them are respected and like listened to.
Mhm.
But when it comes to a leader, there's a line there. And you said something really valuable as well. You said the source of this was you were scared to lose staff.
Mhm.
And I've always said, I think the origin of so many problems that business owners can have is that we have a scarcity mindset.
Mm.
And sometimes we are have a scarcity mindset of clients. Sometimes we have a scarcity mindset of our payroll and we're not worried we could make payroll. But also like sometimes we have a scarcity mindset of our own staff.
Right.
We are so terrified to lose people on our staff because all the things that could come from that, right? You know, obviously you don't have people to do the jobs that need done, but also like then you have to hire. What if nobody else wants to work for me? It's really sad. Maybe if you're in a small local community, is that person going to go around town and talk bad about your company if they leave? You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we go down those rabbit holes, right? And I think that's just another example of like a scarcity mindset that a business owner can have, which in the reality of it, you let some people go. I love how you called them sacrificial lambs. You found different people, right? Like there were more people out there that wanted to work for you and you hired them.
Right. Yeah, and I evolved into in my later years, I still never learned how to hire 100%, as far as picking the right person that is a good fit for us and we were a good fit for them. But what I did learn is how to weed out for their sake and ours, I weeded out really early. And I knew not, in the early days, I probably saw some red flags and thought, oh, maybe they'll work out, kind of thing. But time tells you they are not going to work out. And so I evolved into nope, they're not going to work out. And we need to cut ties for all our sakes. And so
Yeah.
if they made it past our 2 week training program, and I say 2 weeks, it was pass or fail, so it took about 2 weeks. If they made it through that, our, attrition rate was really low.
Mm.
Now, it was high during we lost about 50% of the people that I hired, and I'm sitting here thinking it was probably more than that, actually, um, between hire date and then graduating from training.
Training.
uh
Yeah, yeah.
it really eliminated a lot of the future problems that I would have seen.
Which really, it sounds like that training phase, that probationary period of training, that served almost like it's a paid interview
Mm.
more than it is training. Like you probably looked at them while they were still in that training period. It's like, I'm still interviewing you to see if this is going to work.
Right.
But also, like they were interviewing you
Absolute.
at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So did you lose half or maybe more during that period? But also, like maybe it was losses that we're okay to deal with because that probably means they weren't going to be a good fit long term.
Yeah, it's just painful to everyone if you keep the wrong person in a job that they aren't meant to do. And,
Yeah.
you know, back in the days where I did just try to keep bodies more or less to churn out the numbers, then, I dealt with a lot of mm, workers' comp, unemployment, a lot of pot stirring, a lot of toxic things that had I have had this filter in the beginning of their employment, I could have saved us all a lot of trouble. And,
Yeah.
so many things are live and learn. And
That is not.
if somebody would have told me that, how it goes, I'm sure somebody did tell me that. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I know how to lead people, and I've had such and such staff to supervise. But yeah, you learn the hard way.
Whole different thing when it fully relies on you, right?
Yeah.
So let's switch gears here. I know we've been talking to previous home service business owner Martha for a while. I want to talk to now like the role that you're in with quality driven and like this unbelievable like cultural spearhead that you've got like stepped into, right?
Mhm.
There are so many people that are in cleaning business industries. They don't even know where to start. They don't know how to build a culture that feels good, like that we were talking about. What are some ways that you are seeing? And I guess this could be like how you practically, you know, did this as the owner as well. But like, what are some ways you're seeing people practically reinforce their culture in their business? Is it through hiring, training, leadership behaviors, rituals, rhythms that they can do? What are some things you're seeing right now in the circles and connections that you have that these people are doing this and it's working well?
So there are people who are really good at hiring. I'm not going to claim to be one of those people. I was probably above average, but I wasn't one of the great people catching clues during that interview process. People like Libby and using
Mm,
systems and AI systems to help you hire. That all helps. Um, so if you've got that down, you've weeded out a lot of your problems before they ever get to you, and that's great. um, if you don't and you get that system, not I don't see very many people using training as a filter like I did.
mm,
Um, and, I don't know exactly why. I mean, sure, you just spend a lot of time and money hiring somebody and doing all the screenings and so forth. And, maybe the mindset is, I want to give them a chance and I'm going to mold them and I'm going to, it's going to be great. And, I took a different outlook than that, after, after learning the lessons. So I don't see that too much. But now what I do see is I do see people who have gotten much better at getting their boundaries
mm,
transparent so that people know exactly where they stand and like what's allowed. Um, Pay for performance has become a lot more prevalent. And I, of course, love pay for performance. And that really was my very first step of getting, other than the policies, but it, what pay for performance does for you, and you can do it in all forms. It doesn't have to be like actual salary pay or hourly pay. It can be contests and so forth. But what that does is help you separate the pack. And it helps you identify your top performers and make sure they're getting the recognition that
mhm.
they deserve so that you can retain them and you're doing all the things that you need to do for a healthy culture and retention. But then indirectly, it almost, and I always hate to say this, but it almost indirectly shames the ones that aren't doing it because you're
Mhm.
not calling them out, but by omission and not calling them out and publicly recognizing them, you are creating a culture where I either need to step up or I'm going to exit. And that's why I think those programs are so brilliant because you can set up metrics and set up what those thresholds are. And if you hit those metrics, then the next step as an owner and managers is to say, oh my gosh, and recognize the people and make it personal, tell the stories about what they did. And by creating that culture of recognition and praise and some type of monetary, whether it be benefits or whatever, acknowledgement,
Mhm.
you're elevating those people. And the ones that aren't getting it, you don't even have to call their names. It's very evident, and they'll make their decisions. And so I just love that I hate nagging people. I hate, the days of the early days, it was like, okay, now Mary, don't forget that Mrs. Smith, she wants you to lift her trash can and get underneath it and Bubba. We would go through all the things of what they're supposed to do anyway. It
Mm.
was like we were their babysitters before you went out the door for us to remember to tell them all those things that they should be doing anyway. And then when you shift it to where they just have to hit metrics, and the only way they're gonna hit metrics is if they worry about those things and get it right. You either did it or you didn't do it,
Mm.
And, so that's what I see people evolving to and using that more and more. And it feels pretty good because the person, like I was talking about, she would have not ever hit those metrics,
Mhm.
and she would have been mad about it. And it probably would have been my fault because they're not fair and they're not, whatever,
Sure.
but she would have left. And she would have left way before I pushed her out, you know? So that's what I see.
I love it. And I know you and I have had conversations about accountability
Mhm,
being such a huge part
mhm.
of company culture. And I think probably, I don't know, we talked about years ago. You were talking to me about your cleaning company, and one of those switches that you made was you started keeping people accountable,
Right.
and like legitimately started keeping people accountable. What role do you see accountability playing in a company culture, and is it possible to have a healthy company culture without a healthy role of accountability?
I don't think it is. Just because as human beings, we all want to know, how am I doing? When we're at a job or in life or whatever, we want to know, how am I doing? How am I measuring up against everybody else and
Mhm.
all the things? And so if you don't have some way of giving that feedback through accountability. And for me, you know, the early days was I feel like you're absent too much, or I feel like you get too many complaints. And then evolving to, oh, you know what? We allow 4 absences within a 6-month period or whatever it is, and you're at 2, I mean,
Mhm.
those are accountability measures, and I don't think without accountability, it's not fair to either party because I definitely know that I was guilty of this myself. I still see people guilty of this where you just get sick of it and you say, "I'm gonna have to let you go." And, you know, you are thinking, "How could you be surprised?
Yeah.
You've been absent 10 times or whatever." You think it's a no-brainer and won't be a surprise, whereas they're going, "Huh? What?" And that's not fair. So everything needs to be defined. It needs to be transparent where not only you, management, know how someone's doing, but everything you're going to like pay them against or make hiring, firing decisions against, it all has to be very transparent to where they can know, "Oh, I've been absent 2 times and I'm allowed 4." They have to know that, and you, of course, know it, but it shouldn't be a blind sight.
There was another conversation on this season. I apologize to who it was because we were talking about transparency. We were talking about accountability. And I said, it's crazy to me that we don't put this into practice more in like the cleaning space and the home service space because we've all had, and I've heard stories from clients, like we've all had these customers that we thought, these clients, everything was great.
Mm,
Like they always gave 5 stars on their surveys from QDS. They always like said nice things to our cleaners when they were at our house. And then all of a sudden, they're gone.
right.
And we are left as the cleaning owners. What the heck?
Mhm,
What do you mean you're gone? We thought everything was great.
mhm.
And they say, well, there was this thing a few months back and
Yeah,
this happened and we weren't really happy with it. And then it just kept happening again and again. And then on our side, they were like, wait, why didn't you tell us this?
right,
This is an easy fix. We could have fixed this. And we get stuck into that like frustrating mode of like, we don't know what we don't know.
right,
You're not going to offend us with feedback. We need to get better, but we can't get better without feedback.
right.
Those same business owners will sit in their office all day and not give feedback to their staff about how well they're doing,
Yeah,
how efficient they are in their positions, telling them how their surveys came back and things they needed to fix. And then either this could happen either way. The employee quits with no warning and you thought everything was great, or you get fed up and you let that person go and they're frustrated because they thought it was out of left field.
right,
It's because we don't know what we don't know. And the only way to know what we currently don't know is by conversation of transparency and
right.
accountability.
Yeah,
So it's always funny to me. We've all had those situations or seen those situations where a client will quit out of the middle of nowhere when we thought everything was great. And it's frustrating to us. But yeah, internally, that stuff happens all the time.
it does, and like you said, I talk to a lot of people that just cannot deliver. I don't even wanna say bad news. They just can't have those conversations because what I hear, and probably you've heard, is, "I just hate confrontation," and I'm like, "It's not confrontation, it's a
Yeah.
conversation." It's like I said, and if you're measuring it with data,
Mhm.
then it's just a factual conversation. You know, like I say, anytime you're doing the I feel like, well, okay, that you need to figure out I know that, as far as the conversation needs to shift in that you have objective things to measure by, and then it makes that conversation so much easier because
Mhm.
it's just like now your duty to tell them, well, this is where you're at and this is what we allow, and if this doesn't improve, this is the next step. It just makes it so much easier and takes the emotion out of it.
Yeah. 0 emotion, all data,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And I think even this goes back to I think what we were talking about earlier when I was talking about scarcity mindset. I think owners avoid conversations. Yes, because they're scared of confrontation, but also what I think they're afraid of what confrontation could do,
Right.
which means that that employee could quit and then I'm losing an employee,
Yeah.
I'm losing staff, I'm behind again. So I think once again, I think that is rooted in like the origin of that could be rooted in that scarcity mindset of staff.
Right. And if you wait, and I used to do this too, if you wait until it's really bad you're more likely to get that kind of reaction where they up and quit because it feels very hopeless at that point. And you're kind of on your last straw.
Yeah.
Whereas if these conversations are just part of the interactions, and if you think about it, it's respecting the employee. I mean,
Mhm.
it's disrespectful if you have these thoughts and you're frustrated with
Yep.
something they're doing. I mean, it's kind of like a spouse or, whatever. If you're having the thoughts and you're not talking about it, then it's disrespectful because how can they fix it? And nobody wants that. So it's a much kinder thing to do, but it's not easy, and it gets much easier when you get things well defined and it feels like you're just doing what you're told to do because that's what the policies say or whatever.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Another conversation. This is so good. I'm so glad we're talking today. Another conversation, or we've talked about in this season, is the idea of you've built a culture. It is strong enough to get you to maybe that seven-figure mark or close to it, and you are now in scale mode, right? You are trying to grow your company as quickly but as healthy as possible. And a lot of times a culture is a hard thing to keep going when you're scaling, right? Because like the focus is now on revenue, it's now on profitability, it's now on all things that maybe are not
Right.
people centered. What are some ways that you can point people in the right direction to, like, as they're growing, as they're scaling, they can keep that culture strong?
So I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday because as you grow, you're probably less and less involved on keeping that culture alive. And so for me, and what I was talking about yesterday is that I now need people to report those KPIs to me, and I need some KPIs that are indicative of our culture. So, um, some of the things that we did, and um, not all of these are actual KPIs. Some of them are lead measures, if you're familiar with the compound effect. And uh, so I had them report to me like, we measured discipline in green, yellow, and red. So I had them report how many people did we have in yellow and or red. Um, I wanted to know how many open positions we had, how many people applicants we had, how many people we interviewed, how many people do we have in training. I need to know like that whole pipeline. And then our quality score was a big indicator because as people get less and less satisfied with the job, their performance, not always, but performance usually slips. And so you will see some of those numbers come down. Um, Also, you talked about people like all of a sudden saying 555 and then saying, "Oh, I'm."
I'm out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah. Response rate is a big thing because generally what people will do, they may give you a 5, more likely to, if they want to take the kind of chicken way out, they're going to give you like a 4, or they're going to not answer. Usually they'll not give you a 5. Some will, but we looked for a drop in score and we looked for the response rate going down.
Mm.
And, we used a report where if I saw, I mean, I knew what our range is. And if I saw us dip below that range, then I went immediately to a report that showed me breakdown by teams and people. And I could identify like these people are all within our accepted range for response rate, and these people have dropped below.
Mm.
And that was my ding, ding, ding. These are the first customers we're calling. And we would start with the people who hadn't answered, but we'd even call people who had answered, and particularly if they had a score drop. So it's just, there are signs that, and whatever your signs are, um, you have to figure out what are your healthy metrics for culture? And
Mm.
then the other thing is pay. Like we were in a business that they we were in a business where it fluctuated, so it wasn't a 40-hour work week salary kind of thing. And I had to make sure well, our office manager made sure that they fell within that range of not too much, not too little, kind of a range. And we actually watched that, and we asked them early on, what's your minimum that you need to make each month to, or per paycheck, I'm sorry, to feel comfortable. And then we always took that up at least 10% because they're not going to tell you exactly. And then, so we watched to make sure we weren't falling below, and that was a KPI towards the end. I didn't
Mm.
discover that in the beginning, but towards the end, that was a KPI we watched to make sure we were hitting people's payroll targets. Because if you're not, they're not staying with you.
They're gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when you've had that conversation before and then you slip out of that range.
Yep.
Yeah, they're gone. Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. We've officially launched EOS here at Five Door Media and the agency, and scorecards are obviously a large part of EOS and that accountability and transparency conversation. And I always loved in the EOS training that we did, they said, because everybody asks, like, all right, how do I build out a scorecard? Like, what the heck should be on these scorecards? All these different metrics. Like, there's 1,000 things to track, right? Like, how do I build this out? What should be on it? And somebody described it, said, imagine if you, the business owner or the department head, whichever L10s we're talking about, you're on in some like abandoned island and you have no internet, you have no phone. The only communication you get about what's going on back in the business
Mhm.
is a 3x5 card scorecard.
Right.
What metrics would you need to have on that 3x5 card to know, have a good feeling on like the overall health of the organization? I'm like, oh, that is such a great analogy
Yeah.
of what should be on that scorecard. And like you, everything you just described, there are cultural KPIs that you could look at and get a really good idea on how the culture is moving. So as you are scaling, as you are growing, you're focused more on sales, then you're focused more on maybe investing in marketing and getting new clients and still have that scorecard, right? Maybe it's an intentional cultural scorecard that you could be looking at, but intentionally once a week,
Yeah.
twice a week, whatever it is, and look at that data coming in. And that could help you really determine, even though I'm stepping out a little bit from day to day from that main cultural role, I'm still got a good pulse on what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that me living 100 miles from our main office, one was 60 and then the other one 100, 90, whatever. Um, but I think that really helped me because I didn't know about EOS at that time. And that really helped me figure out, like you say, I had to have a scorecard.
Yeah.
I had to have a scorecard.
You were kind of on that island
I
defaulting.
really
Yeah.
was, and those last few years, I probably went to the office once or twice a month, and but yet was in contact, be it
Yeah.
Zoom and all that, but, and I didn't not feel like I knew what was going on, meaning that, we had our financial KPIs, we had our cultural KPIs, and I felt if I didn't feel good about it, then I would have had to drive down there more. So I made sure that I could come up with systems so that I could watch things, and I never wanted to go to the dark place again. So I
Yeah.
watched.
Yeah. Your previous lessons slash failures teach you to what to do
And
and, moving forward,
it's
right?
what you do not want.
100%. Yeah. All right. One of my last questions. We've been filling in this blank the whole series or whole season here. Company culture dies when blank.
I'm gonna say when the communication dies,
Mm,
because really everything that we talked about in this session, talking about policies, talking about where you're at, talking about um, top level performance, all those things are communication modes.
mm,
So I really feel like um, communication, and you can really never over communicate other than sharing things you shouldn't share. But you
sure.
know what I'm saying is that um, I can remember a tech coming back and being so upset because we were running a special, and the client was asking about our monthly special, and she was like, I looked stupid. I didn't know what she was talking about. And
Mm,
I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I never even thought to tell our marketing stuff to the techs. But that's just an example of a high performing employee wants to look good, and they need all the information, those things. So we even shared our financial KPIs in a way that, like number of clients and so forth, but people need to feel included.
yeah.
When they don't feel included, they feel like they're secrets, and that those are purposeful, and it's then the mistrust starts. So yeah, communication is
Per-
what I would say.
Perception is reality, right?
Mhm.
And it is fully on us on what they are perceiving
Right.
the company culture is. That's on us, right?
Yep.
Well, hey, Martha, thank you so much for being here
Thank
today.
you.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while, and you brought all the value to this. And I know anybody watching or listening at home or at the office, in the car, wherever you're at, you're better off at the end of this podcast. So, and just thank you for being a part of this. If people want to learn more about you, more about maybe like the cultural coaching and consulting you can offer, as well as QDS, your software that you have, how do people get a hold of you?
You can find me on Facebook, or Martha at QualityDrivenSoftware.com.
Great. And we'll try to put those links into the show notes too, so you can find her more. Uh, Thank you. Thank you guys for watching this episode of the Five Door Media Podcast. Season 3 of Company Culture. Season 4 is on the way. So if you're getting close to the end of this season, season 4 is coming. And I promise it's going to be a really great season. It's going to bring a lot of value to you and your cleaning business as well. Martha, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here and watching. We'll see you next time.